There's some background noise like a TV or something that's on. I don't know where it's coming from.
It is 10 o'clock, so you can start now.
Good morning, Corporation Commission. Andrew Friend.
Chair Keen, you're not coming through. Chair Keen, it sounds like a robot and you're not coming through.
You hear me now?
Yes. And Michelle, are you going to drop the screen? There we go.
Looks like we still
Lost.
have the chair, but he's on mute.
Yes.
How about that? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. We'll start again. I'm Dwight Keen. I'm chair of the Kansas Corporation Commission. I'm joined this morning by fellow Commissioner Susan Duffy and Commissioner Andrew French. At this time, I will call to order this meeting of the Kansas Corporation Commission on the 7th day of June, 2022. Commissioners, first matters before us for consideration this morning are 14 items on the consent agenda. We have opportunity to review the drafts of each one of these orders. So I would turn to each of you and ask if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and I'll begin with Commissioner Duffy.
I have no questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner French.
No questions. I move approval of the consent agenda.
I second the motion.
Second, any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
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 And Chair Keen, we can't hear you again. Maybe if you turn to the north.
Okay. I'm going to do that. I've got a rabbit foot.
Put some foil around your thumbs or something. Okay, I think we're working now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we have one notice that we just sent this morning. It's docket number 22-TRAM-529-PEN. This is in a matter of the investigation of Josh Harkness Logging LLC of St. Paul, Kansas regarding violations of the motor carrier safety statutes, rules, and regulations, and the commission's authority to impose penalty sanctions and or the revocation of motor carrier authority. We have for our consideration a penalty order, and our presenter this morning is Assistant Litigation Counsel Hassan Latif. Good morning, Hassan.
Morning, Commissioners. The penalty order before you arises out of a compliance review of Josh Harkness Logging LLC, a common carrier that hauls logs, poles, beams, and lumber, and operates out of St. Paul, Kansas. The investigation was conducted May 6, 2022 by Special Investigator Michael Heenan. During the investigation, the special investigator found several violations, and the order before you penalizes 3 of those violations, resulting in $3,750 in total penalties. They are a $250 fine for failing to require its driver to make a record of duty status. The special investigator found 8 violations of this type. There was a fine, which has no charge under the current penalty matrix, for failing to ensure that each of the drivers had an equal chance of being selected for drug testing. The carrier failed to remove some of the drivers that were no longer drivers for the company, and so that created an imbalance. I think after some discussions, we are planning to revisit this on the penalty matrix for next year, and so we'll be bringing the updated penalty matrix to you all later this month to review, and I think that we'll be revisiting how we find this penalty at that time. And the final penalty on this penalty order is a $3,500 fine for failing to conduct a pre-employment inquiry into the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse for its driver. The driver in the trip that we noted they didn't conduct an inquiry into the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, where they would have found that he was prohibited from driving due to previously refusing a pre-employment test for another carrier. Instead, he did drive for the company and was involved in a crash that injured himself and I believe totaled the vehicles involved. And on the inspection report conducted by the Highway Patrol, they noted 2 drug violations, including possession of alcohol and possession of an illicit substance during the accident. We don't have a penalty on the penalty matrix for not conducting the pre-employment inquiry. And so we are instead asking the commission to diverge from the penalty matrix and approve a penalty for this violation. And staff recommends the penalty be $3,500 as an enhanced fine, which would the total penalty for this penalty order would be $3,750. Staff recommends approval of the order before you, which includes the enhanced fine, and I and staff are available to take any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan, for that overview. Let's see if there are any questions. I would turn first to Commissioner Duffy.
Thank you, Chair Keen. So we've had a couple of these where the company, the operator, failed to really, in the spirit of the law, do the random, have all their employees be part of the random controlled substance and alcohol test. And we had that discussion, Hassan, and I'm glad to see, and Mike's on here today, that you guys are going to review and make a recommendation about a first offense, not waiting till the second offense, because I think perhaps this will be increasingly what we're seeing. So it's there for them to use. They should be using it. And to not, I think, is a major breach in their responsibility to the driving public, other than themselves. Also, I do like the idea of the other item that you have proposed as well. And so I'm glad to see that you all are taking a look about what's going on in Kansas and reflecting your recommendations on the matrix, on the penalty matrix, to reflect what is going on in the what you see in the industry. Hassan, are there any other items beyond that you're seeing, or Mike, as it relates maybe to this particular operator and drug and alcohol testing?
I'll let Mike and Gary talk about this particular operator. I know that we have a meeting later this week to review penalties that we've seen over the course of the year and how we want to adjust the penalty matrix based on all the different compliance reviews we've done this year. And so we're planning to do that review this week and then bring that updated penalty matrix to you all this month.
Okay. Is this something you train on with the drivers, that they should be expecting this? Mike, Gary?
Gary, I think it is added to our training program. Yeah, all this is trained, Susan. Our training program covers every aspect of the Motor Carriers Compliance Program. So yeah, they are trained on this. The clearinghouse violation that we're adding today is simply something that's kind of evolved from what we adopted, or we had suggested adoption of last year. So as it evolves, we're going to continue to see more potentially new fines or finable issues pop up. But through our meeting this next week, we'll try to cover the majority of those so that we get them addressed ahead of time.
And is that clearinghouse a national clearinghouse? So I move into Kansas and I want to be a driver and haven't been for a while. the owner of the company can go see if I've had violations?
That is correct.
Okay, all right. What if I'm wanting to hire that company? How can I determine whether that company has had violations?
Anytime you have a positive drug test, it's got to be reported. The MRO is generally going to report it, but it'll be reported to the clearinghouse. And it is a national clearinghouse. So if it's something is reported in Kansas, it's known nationwide that individual would, in this case, would have been prohibited from actually driving a vehicle until he had gone through the proper procedures for rehab if he wanted to do that.
Okay, and it is only national, there's no international, is that correct? So if I'm a driver from Canada and I've got a questionable background, there's no clearinghouse at that point, or?
I believe it covers all the drivers because CBSA addresses the North American criteria. So it's Mexico and Canada.
So with the trade agreement, we've got products flowing across 3 nations. So you can go from one entity to another, bringing products in. So, okay, that makes sense to me.
I mean, isn't that your understanding, Gary?
Yeah, if it's an international driver, they're subject in the continental U.S. also. And there are a lot of Mexican and Canadian drivers
Sure.
that do operate in Kansas. And even though they have their own driver's license agencies, they're still adhering to the U.S. rules for CDL and drug and alcohol.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that additional education.
Thank you, Commissioner Duffy. Commissioner French.
I have no questions, but thank you for, Hassan, for all the background, helping us understand how we're diverging and why we might be diverging from the matrix here and the specifics of the situation. It is a good educational opportunity for us. With that, I move approval of the order as presented.
And I second the motion.
Moved and seconded that we approve the order. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. The order is approved. Thank you, Hassan,
Thank you.
Gary, and Mike as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
The final matter for our consideration this morning is a discussion item involving Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, docket number ER 22-1846-000. Our presenter is Carly Massenthin, Litigation Counsel. Good morning, Carly.
Good morning, Chair Keenan. Good morning, Commissioners. On May 10th of this year, Southwest Power Pool, otherwise known as SPP, submitted revisions to its open access transmission tariff, otherwise known as the OAT, in docket number ER 22-1846-000. These revisions are intended to establish an alternative process that would allow an entity to apply for an exception to the current cost allocation process. This exception would allow the remaining costs for one or more specific upgrades between 100 and 300 kilovolts, and this range of kV is known as byway facilities, the costs of which are allocated primarily to the local zone in which the facility is located. So this revision would allow those costs to be fully allocated prospectively on a region-wide basis, consistent with larger kV projects or upgrades. And those are known as, the larger kV projects or upgrades are known as highway facilities. And further, the revisions provide that the costs of a new or upgraded byway facility assigned to a transmission owner as a result of an SPP planning process can be fully allocated on a region-wide basis. Commission staff believes it would be beneficial to Kansas to file comments in this docket. Motions to intervene and comments were due on May 31st, 2022. Due to staffing constraints and pressing stateside dockets, staff was unable to make that deadline for comments, however, did file for intervention on that date. Staff has requested additional time to file comments, and to date, that request has not been rejected by FERC. Filing comments further preserves this commission's ability to protect the interests of Kansas ratepayers. I recommend the commission authorize KCC staff's litigation counsel to file comments in FERC docket number ER 22-1846-000.
Thank you very much, Carly. Do we have a motion?
I will make the motion and move the commission authorize KCC Litigation Counsel to file comments in docket number 22-1846 to take such action therein as necessary to protect the interests of Kansas ratepayers.
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the intervention in this matter. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. The matter is approved. Thank you very much, Carly.
Thank you.
Commissioners, by my reckoning, we've come to the end of what was scheduled as business for us this morning. Unless you have any further matters to come before the commission, I would entertain a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Take care.
thank
Care.
you.